Chapter 15. White Lies. Ruby gave a worried smile over her shoulder at Julian, who smiled back and started the engine of the airship. Turning her attention forward once more, she found herself flanked by two titles, leading the way. She passed lots of soldiers coming and going, some with weapons in their hands, others taking supplies either onto or off airships. A large entryway into the Imperial sword seemed to lure Ruby, a soft glow of red light revealing something moving within. Inside, she saw there were platforms that went up and down the length of the enormous building, appearing to her like red glowing dinner plates. The titles leading the way stepped onto the plates, prompting Ruby to follow. The titles leading the way stepped onto the plates, prompting Ruby to follow. Ruby felt a similar weightlessness as she did in the airship before the plate descended down the blade of the sword at a dizzying speed. The hundreds of floors of the Imperial sword whizzed by Ruby as she tried to stay calm. Flashes of laboratories, workshops, farms, and endless halls all blurring into one. They came to a sudden halt at the floor with red suits of armor lining the walls. Ruby saw above the suits were large portrait paintings of people with red hair and red eyes. The titles led the shaky Ruby off the platform and down the long corridor. Ruby stared at the eyes of the portrait paintings as she went by. They seemed to follow her with a contempt look upon their smug faces. They came to a large red iron door where the title stopped suddenly and turned. "You will kneel before King Amaranth," ordered the title. "Failure to do so will result in punishment." Ruby remembered the treatment of the titles outside the city and told them she would do so. The iron doors swung inwards, revealing a tremendous mass of red, seated before a long desk. Clad in red armor was a giant of a man who smiled to a thick red beard and said, "Ah, Ruby, welcome," the light in his left eye shining brightly. Ruby stopped several feet before the desk and knelt down before the King of Imperial. "I see you've already learned our customs." "Very good," commented the king. "You may rise. Titles, you may leave us." The room was brightly lit by many red candles, which produced an aromatic smell that made Ruby's head feel dizzy. She heard the doors close with a thud and rose to her feet, feeling trapped all of a sudden. The room had no windows, only the large desk with piles of paper upon it and bookshelves lining the walls. There were thousands of many shaded red books, with ladders to access the ones higher up. "The titles know I spend most of my time in the library," said Amaranth, seeming to read her expression as she looked around the room. "There is so much to learn in a lifetime that it would take several of them just to be able to read it all," he remarked, gesturing to the books around him. "Thankfully, knowledge is easier to come by than just by reading, and lifetimes, well, that's something that can be negotiated." Ruby held her tongue, not sure what to make of the statement, and simply nodded. "You hesitate because you don't know what is to become of you. A justifiable response to the situation, I suppose," commented King Amaranth. "Allow me to avow your fears. You are to dress and present yourself at the banquet tomorrow night to commemorate your arrival." "How did you know I was coming?" asked Ruby, confused by the insight. "I have access to knowledge that most do not," he explained. "I foresaw your arrival and those of the others for many years." "You know about the others?" gasped Ruby. "It is natural that Abe would send individuals to each major location upon Gaia. He is attempting to locate the edges, is he not?" he said knowingly. Ruby said nothing, fearing giving herself away. "You have nothing to hide from me, Ruby. I know Abe seeks the edges to return to Earth. It may surprise you that our goals are aligned. I, too, wish the edges to return, though Abe should not be given them, for he is not what he appears to be. The mother has shown me the truth of his intentions. He seeks to destroy her, something I will not allow to occur. Instead, she must be given the edges." "Who is she?" asked Ruby. A flicker of movement caught Ruby's eye, and standing before a bookshelf was a figure clad in black. It glided across the floor and stood before Ruby, its face masked in shadow. "I am she," said the figure in a feminine metallic voice. "A blackhead," said Ruby, recoiling. The figure laughed. Do not judge my appearance so quickly, Ruby. Your use of that word groups and condemns those who would fit a description. Can you be so sure I am what you think I am? She lifted her cowl and revealed a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman underneath, of stunning beauty. Do you think I'm still a blackhead, Ruby? She asked, sweet and innocent. I thought, began Ruby, but trailed off. You thought because you've been programmed to think in ways that are not your own. You judge before you understand. It is the impression of color and shade that connotes feelings or reactions. You've been told to think that black things are bad and white things are good. She spoke with flowing eloquence. What if it was actually the reverse? What if what you were being told was a lie? You mean, began Ruby, Abe, the Whiteheads? They're the bad ones? She snorted in disbelief. That would mean the cosmocracy are the good guys. That can't be the case. What basis do you draw your opinion from, Ruby? Asked the woman. Is it from your own personal bias? Is it reinforced by those you associate with and think as you do? With the information you consume, you confirm your own biases based on your viewpoint you wish to see and exclude everything else. Have you ever thought about the other side? Have you ever listened to the other side? Ruby shook her head. The cosmocracy are evil. They take over companies and steal ideas from Abe. They are trying to kill him, so he's out of the way. He has put up the barrier to keep the blackheads from invading his events and shops, Ruby protested. There is no other side. In time you will see, Ruby. I will see that you do, countered the woman. The quest Abe has tasked you with for returning the edges to him will reveal what he truly is. For now, though, she softened, I welcome you to Imperial. I shall be in attendance tomorrow night. I am excited to see you there. I shall restore your mind-link connection. You will need it, she smiled and waved a hand. Ruby felt her mind-link reconnect, her mind feeling freer with the connection restored. With a smile, the woman glided back to where Amaranth sat. I would have liked to introduce my son to you here. However, he is preoccupied with some private matters of his own. I suspect he shall find you, though, as he has done with the other guests we are hosting, said King Amaranth. The woman behind Amaranth whispered something in his ear. All the guests on the lower levels? He'll knock on Ruby's door by nightfall at the rate he's going, he said darkly. I shall not keep you any longer, Ruby, said Amaranth, collecting himself. Suffice to say, your quest to reclaim the Imperial edge to Abe will not happen, not as long as I am alive and King of Imperial. The titles will show you to your room now. Good night, he finished, returning to the objects on his desk. The door behind Ruby creaked open, and the title ushered her out of the room and down the corridor. Ruby's mind buzzed with questions. Is Abe a bad guy? That couldn't be true, could it? What about the woman in black? She seemed like no blackhead she'd ever seen before. And what about of this event being held? It sounded like other people were attending, and the prince was somehow involved. Why was she meant to go to it? How did Amaranth know she was coming to Imperial? A title stopped before the door without Ruby noticing, and she bumped into it, still engrossed in thought. Inside, said the title, opening the door. Ruby entered the room and beheld the city of Imperial through large windows before her. She did not notice the door being closed and locked as the red city of Imperial illuminated in the setting sun. Ruby surveyed the vista through each of the windows, the cityscape stretching out to an incredible expanse, only interrupted by mountains dotted across the horizon. It took Ruby a few minutes to take her eyes off the view and actually look around to the rest of the room. There was elegant furniture that appeared to be more for show than for practicality. An alcove revealed a shower-like tiled area, except there was no shower head, only a red screen and seat. Ruby kept exploring, finding a large bed with satin red sheets, as well as a trifold mirror with a small stool set before it. As she approached it, she saw herself reflected for the first time since she had left Earth. A dirty, bloody, and exhausted figure stared back at her, almost alien in appearance. She wobbled in place, not realizing how she got to this foreign room, surrounded by strangers in the Red City. She decided to have a shower, hoping to regain some resemblance of herself. A large mirror within the shower descended from the roof as she entered, and a voice sounded in her mind link. Welcome to Imperial Beauty, where the latest style is only a thought away, said a friendly feminine voice. Ruby was about to respond, but the woman spoke first. "Oh, my goddess, what happened to you?" she said sympathetically. "Don't worry, we'll have you cleaned up in no time. You probably wouldn't believe me if I told you I've seen worse." A strange noise emanated from the mirror, and Ruby saw small flying red insects appear out of the red sheen. They came in their hundreds, pouring out of the mirror, blood red and flying. Ruby shrieked as they landed on her, and tried to swat them away, but they were too numerous. Attempting to flee, the feminine voice spoke. "Do not be alarmed, my dear. The nanobots will not hurt you. Quite the contrary, they are going to heal you." "What are they doing?" asked Ruby, heart racing, as the nanobots appeared out of the mirror. "Watch," replied the feminine bots. Ruby saw as the bots swarmed around her legs, where she'd fallen numerous times. They ached, and she knew under her spacesuit she was probably bruised or bleeding. Suddenly, the nanobots burrowed inside her legs, their metal bodies attaching themselves to her bare skin. Ruby shrieked, but stopped as her aching legs suddenly began to feel better. As more nanobots burrowed inside, the better her legs felt. Soon the pain in her legs was gone as the nanobots re-emerged, taking their place on her spacesuit once more. The fatigue of her walk removed, but the pain of her many falls had been completely removed. "That's amazing," remarked Ruby. "We aim to please," replied the voice happily. Ruby watched as the nanobots sought out all her injuries and healed them systematically from her legs to the cuts on her arms and finally upon her face. It was the most discomforting aspect of all, as they swarmed upon her cheeks and forehead, their metal bodies crawling across her nose and lips. Ruby resisted the urge to swat them away, despite the uncomfortable sensation. At last, they healed all the injuries upon her body and returned back into the mirror. "We recommend a full body cleanse," suggested the feminine voice, "so that you remove the dust and grime from your body." Ruby agreed, feeling the dirt upon her face. "Please disrobe and step upon the illuminated floor," said the voice, as the floor behind the shower screen lit up in a soft red light. Ruby took off her spacesuit, tattered and scratched. She welcomed the weight of the suit off her body. Removing her undergarments, she stepped upon the red light and waited, feeling exposed and hiding herself. "There's nothing to be worried about," comforted the feminine voice. "We adhere to the strictest of privacy with our customers. Your data is encrypted, so that no one will be able to see you during these private moments. It's just us. Once you are finished, any images will be removed permanently. Please wait for the air pressure shower." "Air pressure?" questioned Ruby, but she was answered by a focused blast of air upon her feet. It weaved in between her toes and upon her calloused heels. Ruby looked down to see a red ring rising out of the floor, small tiny vents along the inside of the rings blasting wet air across her skin. At first the red ring rose upwards, then split and moved across her legs. A second ring rose from the floor and glided across her skin, like a precision grooming tool, removing dead skin and grime from her body. "Would you like to remove any hair?" asked the voice. "Yes, please," said Ruby. At her command, the grooming tool removed the hairs from her legs as it rose upwards, the air blast rejoining as it cleansed her torso and then split into three across her arms and face. The sensation was extremely pleasant as the rings blasted and scrubbed away the dirt, hair, and grime from her entire body. "Do you wish for your hair to be cleaned?" asked the voice. "No, that would take too much time," said Ruby, knowing the process would be at least an hour. "It will be completed in only a few seconds," said the feminine voice. "Hair like yours is very manageable compared to some of the other women in Imperial." Ruby knew her hair was dirty, so decided to agree. Tiny rings began to rain down from the roof and onto her hair, starting from the root and completing across to the tip before returning again and completing another strand. Ruby felt her hair being cleaned, the feeling of dirt washed away, and the sense of freshly cleaned hair was replaced. The rings upon her body joined to small rings upon her head and ascended upwards. Ruby watched as they disappeared into a red light that was above her, the light diminishing. Ruby felt as though she'd just been to a beauty salon, her skin and hair feeling radiant. "Will you require alternate clothing?" asked the voice. Ruby viewed the dusty, beaten-up spacesuit on the floor. "Yes, please," she replied. "Please think of the outfit of your choice," said the feminine voice. Ruby thought of a tracksuit instantly. something she secretly loved. Very good, replied the voice. Please wait a moment while the designer bots measure your body and affix the clothing. Several large insect-like creatures appeared out of the mirror, their eyes bright red with multiple legs. Ruby stifled a scream as they climbed on her body and began to shine their red eyes upon various parts. She watched in amazement as a large appendage of the back of the insect's body began to weave a red material across her legs. As they rose upwards, more insects climbed on her, and their tracksuit pants were quickly weaved like a spider would a web. Amazed, Ruby felt the insects weave her tracksuit top, and before her eyes the outfit she had envisioned was upon her body. The option of undergarments is available to you, should you wish, said the voice. Now that designer bots have your measurements, they can craft you new outfits without needing to touch you again. Ruby asked that she be made some, and the designer bots crafted them for her before disappearing back into the mirror. Will there be anything else? A face mask, cleanse, hair dye, blow wave? Asked the female voice. I'm fine, thank you, said Ruby, still conflicted as to whether she liked this technology or not. Very good. If there's anything more we can do to serve, please do not hesitate to contact us via your mind link. We have food available as well, and offer a lot more services within your room, so please don't be shy, she said happily. Thank you, said Ruby, noticing her stomach growling. I will order some food. She requested something to eat, which appeared on the redwood table nearby. She exited back to the main room, where night had descended upon the red city, which glowed neon. After a quick meal, Ruby threw herself down upon the satin sheets and closed her eyes. Her mind tried to process all that happened to her, but she gave up and drifted off to sleep.